You want to ask them questions? I see. Yeah. Here is Bill wants to say hello. Hello, Jan.
Hi there.
How are you?
Oh, how are you in New York?
Oh, just fine. We're having a wonderful time.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's nice to hear your voice.
Thank you. We have today's seminar. We did not have a topic. We left it open for anyone to ask any questions that they may want to explore with you.
So it's a topless seminar.
I can tell you I am the influence of the California neighborhood.
I just heard Ann talk.
Ann?
Yeah, was it Ann?
No, it's Marjorie.
Oh, Marjorie.
Yeah. I just introduced a few ideas. We just talked a little bit about relevant questions, what are relevant questions, and what are good intentions to ask questions with, and about the issue of intellect. We talked a little bit about that here. So we are now ready to come with our questions to you.
All right, well, let's make a study of the nature of questions then. How is that?
Hello, Dr. Hora.
Yes?
This is Anna.
Hello, Anna.
I've developed some physical symptoms that I would like to explore the meaning of. I'd like to give you just a little bit of background of that. They developed when I was first having marital problems, and that led me and my husband to Metapsychiatry for counseling. Now, the symptoms are related to hypoglycemic symptoms, where if I don't have regular meals, I will have a sense of extreme hunger and will start feeling really bad.
Yes.
In addition to that, since I've been in metapsychiatry, I've been more ill than I have been in the past. I've developed every few months, in addition to the hyperglycemia thing going on, cold symptoms and a persistent cough.
Yeah.
And this has been somewhat frustrating to me because I have not been used to being ill in the past. And a difficult time discerning the meaning of this when I am exposed to what I have brought have been very healing ideas.
So you're giving credit to metapsychiatry for your worst condition.
Yes,
That's nice. At least we have some effect. You know, Anna, getting worse and getting better is the same.
Oh. No, I didn't know that.
Do you understand it?
No, I don't.
Is there anyone who could explain this koan? Getting worse and getting better is the same.
Well, it seems that even though we are focused on the material world of the body, of the symptoms.
That's right. You get a gold star, Jan.
Thank you.
The Bible says, they that are at home in the body, whether in metapsychiatry or not, are absent from the Lord. Let us therefore rather be absent from the body and present with the Lord. Physical healing is a byproduct of the study of metapsychiatry. It is not the primary aim. Anna, did you know that?
Yes.
Yes, you did?
Yes.
Okay, what?
I wasn't attempting to have my symptoms. Well, yes, I was. I came to that psychiatry to release them.
Yeah, right. What is the primary aim of metapsychiatry?
To help understand truth.
Individual redemption, Anna. What do we mean by that?
Not sure.
Can anyone explain it in the class?
It's Roberta. Does that mean coming to realize we're a living soul?
Well, you could say that, but somebody could accuse you that this is a prefabricated answer.
Who would do that?
What do we mean by individual redemption?
To transform our mode of being in the world.
That is also good,
Fabricated it.
but somebody might accuse you that this is a prefabricated answer.
Dr. Hora,
Yes,
this is Jay.
yes, Jay.
First, aren't we individuals in the process of being lifted up from the old to be redeemed?
That's right, from the sea of mental garbage, Jay. That's correct. Is being lifted out of the darkness of life in the sea of mental garbage, above the firmament into the ocean of love intelligence. That is redemption. Now, what good is that? Does that have any practical value? Or is it just religious mumbo jumbo?
Well, right at this point, I'm afraid it sounds like religious mumbo jumbo.
Okay. Now that was right at this moment. How about the next moment?
I'm thinking.
You never do that. What happens when we are redeemed? What can we expect through redemption? What is the payoff?
Would it be to live in the ocean of love intelligence?
Now, what would that mean in practical terms?
To see reality?
So what's the big deal about that?
I want to say that's wonderful.
How do you know?
Because once in a while I cast a small glimpse. And at that moment, it's very wonderful.
Yes. Well, through redemption, we not only experience physical healings and regeneration and vigor, vitality, but we also notice that the world around us undergoes a change for the better, and we begin to experience what we have called harmonious prospering. And many of our difficulties disappear, and life becomes easier and more effective in every department. So that is our hope when we study metapsychiatry.
Therefore, the symptoms that Anna mentioned maybe help her to understand what of the sea of mental garbage exactly it is that he needs to be free from.
Well, of course, all symptoms have a meaning, but I don't think that it would be appropriate to go into that at this occasion, because that requires a great deal of privacy in an individual session. In order for the discovery of the meaning to be genuine and helpful, there must be recognition, regret with willingness to be embarrassed, and reorientation. And that requires a very private situation, individual context of an individual session.
Thank you, Dr. Croy.
You're welcome, Anna.
Dr. Roy, this is Sherry.
Yes, Jay.
I have two questions. And when Jan announced that we could ask anything we wanted to,
Yes,
um,
as long as it's black.
okay. Oh, I remember that. That's the car. There's a scripture in John where he talks about, I am the vine and you are the branch.
Yes,
And he talks about that you have to be pruned
yes,
to get fruit.
right.
Every time I read that, I just get real upset.
Yeah,
And I can see that I don't like being pruned.
I know
It's very painful. Jan's laughing. Joanne, this morning Jan talked about that when we look at our problems that we're chasing after something. And my other question was that my feet swell. And I've looked at it as a thought, and that I remember my mother feet swelling, and so I associated with that. So it's just a thought that wasn't my own thought. But what is the meaning of the resistance of the scripture? I'd like to know.
Well, what does it mean to be pruned,
Cut back.
cut back? What would that mean?
My thought was to cut out something.
Yes, yes. Jesus,
Cut out living in the sea of natural garbage and dig it for God.
yeah, Jesus also said something very violent. He said, if thine arm offend thee, cut it off. And if thine eye offend thee, pluck it out. That's pretty violent recommendation, don't you think?
Yes, sir.
And adds something along the lines of pruning, right?
Yeah,
What could that mean?
I'd like to know. I'd like to understand.
Well, for instance, I know someone who had difficulty with his eyes, and he discovered that he has a way of looking in a lustful way at women. And that resulted in various eye symptoms in him. And so he had to pluck it out. He had to stop using his eyes in a prurient way to gratify himself in his erotic fantasies. So that's a pruning, right? Could you see that?
Yeah.
Whenever we have to give up certain cherished practices which are existentially invalid, that way we are pruning ourselves. And that's what is meant by having to prune. So don't be afraid of it. Of course, sometimes there is resistance to it because we have a tendency to cherish certain invalid ideas and ways of using our senses. But if you are sincerely interested in healing and redemption, and you will be willing to accept this kind of pruning.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
John said this morning that healing was as instantaneous as the question is clear.
That his healing was what?
Was as instantaneous as your question is sincere.
Is sincere. Yes, so?
So, what does the answer have to do with it?
The answer?
Right. Well, I find myself interested in the answer.
In answer. What kind of answer?
To question. Well, if you ask a question,
Yes,
you're sincere about the question.
yes.
Does it matter what the answer is?
Well, of course it matters. If you ask me what did I have for lunch, it is important that I tell you the truth. Well, it is the answer has to be relevant to the question, and it has to be existentially valid. Otherwise, it is just a game of hide and seek.
Okay, I guess that what I'm wondering is if somebody asks a question that is sincere, can an answer affect a healing?
Well, there is more. You see, it's not enough to say the question is sincere. For instance, you can sincerely ask a question, what is the meaning of my legs swelling up, right?
Right.
You can be sincere about it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you really are interested in understanding the answer to it. So what is needed is sincerity of motivation and willingness to face up to what reveals itself, and then correcting the idea, the invalid idea underlying this problem, with the truth, the existentially valid answer.
Thank you, Dr.
Well, perhaps we could ask Jan, what is meant by a sincere question?
Well, we were talking about the right question.
The right question.
So of course, it's not just the purpose was not to emphasize the question only,
Yes,
but the right question leads to a right answer.
yes, that's true. There are many dumb questions, as we know.
Right. If you ask a dumb question, you get a dumb answer.
Oh, yeah,
You ask a good question, you get a good answer.
if you're lucky.
And today we seem to be lucky.
Yes, all right. Well, there is more involved, of course, than just the question. There is motivation is also very important.
Right.
What motivates our question?
Right.
For instance, you can just be sincerely curious about metapsychiatry, and then your questions will lead nowhere.
Right.
Yes? Or you can be sincerely inquisitive about metapsychiatry, and then your questions will avail you nothing. Or you can be sincerely interested in healing of a problem, and then your question will be sincere and it will be well motivated, where you're seeking to really face up to some problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
We said that the best intention, motivation is to learn from the problem what is it telling us about our misguided mode of being in the world.
That's correct. Yes. Right. Which is,
Problems are our taskmasters.
that's right.
And if we are willing to listen and hear what they have to say about the way our mode of being is,
Yes.
then that can lead to a transformation of our mode of being.
That's correct. Yes.
And that is what healing in metapsychiatry is, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Transformation of our mode of being to wholeness.
Yes.
I guess, Dr. Hora, what I'm wondering about is that if you're talking about two people that are maybe both studying metapsychiatry,
Yes.
and does it matter who you ask the question of? If you are sincere, can you trust that the answer is? Can I just forget that?
Now, perhaps I would help you to rephrase your question.
I wish you would.
How can we know that the answer is valid? The answer which we get either by ourselves or through an individual who is helping us. How can we know that the answer is valid?
That's a very good question.
Isn't it?
That's what I was trying to ask.
You see, how did you know that this is a valid question now, at this point?
Because it was clear.
It was clear, and somehow you were able to discern that it is true, right?
Right.
Right, that it is valid. Now, everyone has the faculty of being aware of the truth. And so you don't have to really trust anybody, because you have yourself, you have the capacity to tell whether you are kidding yourself or not. Of course, there are people who are very masterful in self-deception, but then that's another problem which can also be healed.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Carol.
Yes, Carol?
I'm still struggling over the situation with my husband seemingly dead.
Yes.
I had a dream over a week ago, and I'd like to, I wrote it down, and I would like to discuss it with you, see if you could help me with the interpretation of it.
Yes. Well, don't discuss it with me, just tell me about it.
Okay. I was pushing a wheelbarrow down a narrow ramp, and this ramp was leading to the ocean.
Yes.
And while I was pushing it, I looked down and realized that it must be a coffin, because the wheelbarrow lid on it had elaborate engraving on top of it.
Yes.
And as I approached the ocean, I released the wheelbarrow into the water, and as I did, a sudden shocking realization that it was Dick, and
Yeah.
I could feel the pull to go with him. But all of a sudden, I knew that I couldn't, that it wasn't right, and I turned and started crying uncontrollably.
Yes.
And as I turned, a large man in a black suit was standing there, and he put his arms around me to comfort me.
Yes.
And when I awoke, and I was crying so hard that I woke myself up.
Yes.
Excuse me. Now, what's so strange about that, when I have looked back on it, it not only becomes another emotional experience right away, but I can't remember if I was actually crying out loud when I woke up. But from what I can see, I must have been, because it seems like I was aware of myself crying when I woke up during the night.
Yeah.
Would you help me with that?
Well, I'll give it a shot.
There isn't what I've done.
There was a famous philosopher by the name of Heidegger who defined mourning. He said, mourning is remaining with the dead. It looks like you are still mourning, Carol. And the dream says that you are still very much attached to your husband who has died. Now, Jesus had something to say to people who are remaining with the dead. What did he say? He said, let the dead bury their dead. Follow thou me. Right?
Yes,
You're familiar with this saying?
yes, I am.
Yes. So you have to turn away from your husband who passed on and follow Jesus in the direction of life and fulfillment and happiness and joy. And actually, that is what is happening in the dream, except that you still are indulging yourself in a bit of emotionalism.
Well, would it be wrong for me to stay away from the cemetery for a length of time until I have overcome this?
Yes, certainly it would be very wise. Let the dead bury their dead. Follow thou Jesus Christ. You turn away and turn towards life. And don't be fixated on the issue of death.
Now, I was thinking about that the other night when I was meditating and why this bothers me so, seeming to believe that he is actually dead. Because when I was in her home, right after his death, there was an awareness of his presence there. It was like he really wasn't dead.
Yes.
And what it is, there seems to be a barrier for me to actually realize that.
Yeah.
Even with the vivid experience that he seemed to be alive, that he was there, in spite of not being there bodily.
Well, you are just repeating what we said, that you are hanging on and you're remaining with the dead instead of following Christ. And don't indulge yourself in emotionalism. Emotionalism is one of the 5 gates of hell, as you very well know, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not good to be emotional. And it's not good to remain with the dead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Dr. Hora.
Yes.
This is Christy.
Yes, Christy.
And my question has to do seemingly with the question of the truism. I would like to explore the meaning of what seems to be an interest in the idea of lack or limitation, and what it is the heels of this idea. My symptom currently has to do with the fact that I just moved from a house to an apartment, and I had originally put down a security deposit, which is supposed to be refunded after you've moved out of one place and into another one. And instead of getting back my security deposit, I was actually charged for damages and last cleaning and so forth beyond what the deposit had been originally. And I must say this week I've been kind of hooked into intimidation and provocation and composed all sorts of letters in my head. And now I'm not exactly, I would like to understand the meaning of this. I was charged, for instance, with damages like so lost key to turn on the gas heater, which turned to make the fireplace usable, and the key was never there when I moved there.
things like that, things that were damages to the place before I actually took possession of it, but none of this was actually outlined and signed in a contract. So in a way, I feel like I don't have a leg to stand on. In a way, I do have witnesses that can attest to the fact that these things were simply not true. And it feels like I'm being ripped off, as they say. And I would just like to explore the meaning of continuing interest in lack,
Yes,
or what seems to be lack.
yes. Well, some people have an unconscious vested interest in being victimized in many ways, different ways. It would be helpful to explore whatever there is in your unconscious which motivates you to be an object of victimization. As you well know, nothing comes into experience uninvited. And so you would have to become aware.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Hora, this is Claudette.
Yes, Claudette.
When Mary was talking to you and responded to her, you mentioned something about any ways that individuals have self-deception. And Jan had mentioned to us that one of the first steps is admitting to ourselves that maybe we're not interested. And that there was no blame in that, but that looking at that would help. Could you expand on the idea of self-deception and of interest?
Well, sincere interest comes through suffering, Claudette. It isn't until we have suffered enough that we become sincerely interested to face the meaning of our problems. Now, self-deception, of course, serves a purpose of avoiding embarrassment. And as long as you are not willing to feel embarrassed, you will always find some clever way of avoiding facing up to some issue. For instance, it is sometimes very embarrassing and difficult to face up to certain unconscious memories which would demand that we be victimized. You see, there is only, let's take victimization. You can only be victimized if you want to or if you don't want to. But there must be something in the thoughts, well hidden, which operate and create a need, sort of a desire to be victimized. And if it is too embarrassing, we may deceive ourselves that we are interested in healing, but we would like to be healed in such a way as to be spared of the embarrassment of looking at the real issues. And then, of course, there will be no real result. There will be no healing without that. So that's what self-deception is. It has a purpose, just like rationalization has a purpose, or avoiding studying has a purpose. Everything has a purpose to protect the ego. from the unpleasant experience of feeling embarrassed. The ego doesn't like it. The ego enjoys being proud of itself.
So if you were to say, in an instance like that, if you were aware that you didn't want to be there, if you noticed that and looked at it, just the same thing as like Jan said, if you admit that you're not interested, if you admit that you don't want to be embarrassed, that
Well,
I would take that.
that would be a helpful step, because once you are, that in itself is embarrassing
Yeah.
to admit it.
So I know that has been one of my problems.
Yeah, yeah.
Very definitely.
Yeah. Well, suffering can bring us to our knees, so to speak. And we can reach a point that we say that it couldn't be worse.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Right here.
Hello, this is Ronald Lee.
Yes, Ronali.
I would like to go back to talking regarding supply and limitations and being victimized.
Yes.
Now, I understand if I believe, and I also can have doubt, and therefore I could disbelieve, but that's no answer. I am aware that there is abundance, and yet I feel that as though I am not allowing it to flow in and through my life.
Yes.
Do I therefore draw a conclusion that I want to be victimized? Or could it be something else that I could be interested in learning and letting go of when I don't know the truth? I'm confused. I'm totally lost in understanding the principles and yet applying it or receiving it in my mind as truth and letting wrong perceptions or confusing perceptions flow, let go.
Hmm. Well, I'm not sure that I understand your question, but it sounds like you're really asking, how could I use metapsychiatry to become wealthy?
Like to embarrass me. Oh my Lord. Well, perhaps it's true. I didn't want to be embarrassed. Well, if that's there, that's there. I don't know what to do after that one.
Well, you face up to it and enjoy your embarrassment. And then remember what we said, what the aim of metapsychiatry is. There is something much more precious than being wealthy, and that is being redeemed. You cannot put a monetary value on it.
I agree with you. If then may I go another step? But if I'm still on the right in what I was before, then you can stop me that I haven't accepted my embarrassment. But
Tell me, excuse me, allow me to ask you a question.
please,
If you say, I agree with you, does it mean that you really see it? Or are you...
see and understand for as much as I can.
Okay. So,
The word victimize and other things stand out so that I say, well, then that really is all there is. In other words, your answer is therefore all there is to that. And these other words like victimize and whatever are not connected to what I was thinking. My ego was confusing me.
right, that's right. You are really interested in finding a secret formula to become wealthy, which is all right, but that's not what metapsychiatry is all about.
Thank you. I do see that. And I would like to become wealthy. I'd like to come back to like these.
This is Marjorie.
Yes, Marjorie. Are you wealthy?
Yes.
You see? Metapsychiatry does work.
Dr. Hora, something came to my attention yesterday. Some students at my school told me that there were a group of students, 15 or so, who are intimidating a lot of students at our school during lunchtime. And as a result, some of them are very fearful. And have been taking cover in the library and in other places to get away from this intimidation. And when they informed me of this, I, of course, accosted all the 6 questions, why are they doing this and who's to blame and so on. And I also found that I was becoming very angry and upset with this particular group of boys that happened to be boys, because out of the 15 that they mentioned, 8 of them are in my first grade class. And I thought I had some idea of these boys, and so my concern is that I wanted to understand the meaning of my upset and anger with them. And then I wanted to understand what would be a more helpful approach from me, because I always have a tendency to interfere and to try to study the situation. And I could see that all of this nonsense that's going on in my head about what should I do and who should I tell and let's get this taken care of is not going to be helpful. It never has been. And I would like some help with it.
You would like to know how to function as a policewoman.
Yes, that's always been a mistaken idea that I have. And I have carried that idea for a long time, and I can see that isn't helpful. And I would like to know what would be more helpful.
Well, perhaps you could call the police.
Oh, good. So I win.
But of course, you could secretly pray to be able to see the situation in the context of God. You see, what is lacking in these schools is the awareness of the context of God. The students have no awareness of God's presence, and the teachers, I'm sorry to say, even those that study metapsychiatry, forget to behold the school and everyone in it in the context of God. If you remember, we have a very helpful principle in metapsychiatry which says everything and everyone is here for God, whether they know it or not. And if we endeavor to see every situation this way, and very often it turns out to be very helpful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Matt.
Dr. Hora, this is Anna.
Yes, Anna.
I recently read a chapter in educational psychiatry on wants and needs, and I have some questions on that chapter.
All right.
It stressed the importance of perceiving true need because God supplies need and we live in abundance.
Yes.
And I found myself, when I was thinking about that concept, having a difficult time truly perceiving real needs and changing my orientation.
Yes.
I guess my question is, how with all the invalid ideas that I picked up along the way about what I want and what I need, how do you clearly perceive what is needed so that you can reorient your thinking?
Yeah. Well, it's very simple, Anna. If you listen to the previous questionnaire, Marjorie, you could see that the need is always for a spiritual perspective. That's the only need there is.
How is that? I'm still having difficulty with how is that applied practically.
Yes. Well, it is not practical,
Okay.
but is very helpful. We also speak about looking at life through the eyes of God, which is synonymous with having a spiritual perspective on our situation, which of course most people would say, well, this is not practical because you're not doing anything, right?
Mhm.
Yes. But we are not operational in our approach because we found that operational solutions do not really work. But so our approach is existential. By gaining a spiritual perspective, we bring the presence of God to bear on the situation. And that's the solution.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome, Anna.
Dr. Hora, this is Carol again.
Yes, Carol.
When I was sitting here listening, thought came to me that I have been very tired lately, not seeming to be able to catch up on my rest. By the end of the day, I'm almost exhausted. And a thought occurred to me that I read here a while back that mourning is hard work. Could this be in connection with me being so tired?
Yes, you're exhausting yourself through emotionalism.
Oh. Thank you.
You're welcome, Carol.
Dr. Hora, this is Jenny.
Yes, Jenny.
I'd like to go back to what you were just talking about with Tanner, when you say that what the need is always a spiritual perspective.
Yes.
I have, when she said that, when you were talking about that, the story that came to mind was when she ever said about the fishing bread.
Yes.
I had read a story some years ago where the comment was made, I had read a commentary about that story some years ago where the comment was made that Jesus recognized that what was needed was what the people needed to eat, and he looked to heaven, and it was provided. Am I understanding correctly that what he wrote, but the bread wasn't what was needed? It was his clarity of consciousness.
Spiritual nourishment was needed. And that's what he provided. You see, material food is just a symbolic representation of the real nourishment, which is spiritual understanding.
So then our need is never really an apartment or a job or whatever seems to be perhaps even life-threatening in our human experience.
That's
But always the shifting perspective.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, but then there's another the question that has been asked me many times ever since the Kirkland. You
Yes.
made a mysterious remark there. Something like that, about how it came about. You said something about going to sleep. It's not thing to die.
Yes.
And many times I've been asked what you meant by that, and I don't know. Would you clarify that a little further?
Well, every night when we go to sleep, if we are in the right consciousness, falling asleep is very peaceful and effortless and even pleasant. But if we are in the wrong consciousness, it's an agony, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, everyone has a longing and a hope that when the time will come to pass on, it will be a peaceful and painless passing, right?
Yeah.
So it is important to practice to die peacefully. And when we go to sleep, we can learn how to die peacefully without agonizing, without being sick, but just passing on peacefully. And that is a very good thing to understand, that going to sleep is just a symbolic representation of that great experience called passing on. And it is a special blessing if anyone can die peacefully in bed or sitting in his comfortable armchair. Because most people, everybody is afraid to die.
Yeah.
The people are not afraid of death. They are afraid of the process of dying. Now, if you understand the meaning of going to sleep, then you can utilize that opportunity to learn how to die.
Would you recommend taking that? It's another practice.
Taking naps is sometimes justified. We have worked very hard. But often it is just a matter of self-indulgence.
Yeah.
So you choose, so you have your pick.
So, in other words, going to sleep can also be a practice of self-indulgence.
Yes, but usually that may not work, because if you're just self-indulgent, your sleep may be restless.
Yeah. And so also, some people want to die, maybe also for not to pass on, but to escape stating life.
Well, no doubt there are such situations, yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So, to recapitulate that, what would be, what is then the best or the right way to approach sleep?
Well, no doubt you're aware of the fact that there are many people who are called insomniacs.
Yeah.
There are people who cannot sleep, and there are much more people who cannot fall asleep. They have a very hard time falling asleep. Now, that can be a serious problem, and it entails a lot of suffering. There's even a dread of going to bed, because they will be tossing and turning for hours and not being able to fall asleep, and get up in the morning very tired.
But what could be the meaning of that problem, a symptom?
Well, consciousness is not in PAGL. The best way to go to sleep is in PAGL consciousness. When we are aware of our oneness with God, and our consciousness is pure, free of the turbulences of wanting and not wanting, of envy, jealousy, rivalry, and malice, and vindictiveness, and such, and fears of various kinds, and hidden resentments which torment people. So before going to bed, it is very important to purify our consciousness through meditation and study and Bible reading and contemplating reality from a spiritual perspective. It is particularly helpful to remind ourselves that we are here for God and that we are only interested in what God wants, not what we want or what somebody else wants. This thought that we are only interested in what God wants, this lifts us out of the conflicting and agonizing mental preoccupation with what we want and what we don't want. And that facilitates peaceful sleep.
So the meaning of insomnia has to do with wanting to pursue our own love.
A disturbance of consciousness. Disturbed consciousness. That's what it is.
Jesus opened up, said, "In thy hands I commit my spirit."
That's right.
And that would be the statement of committing oneself to God's will.
Exactly, sure. Is everybody sleeping already?
Dr. Hora, this is Elizabeth.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Is there any benefit for a spiritual speaker in going away, like to a retreat, to a monastery or a Zen center or something like that for a few days?
Well, it's hard to answer. I've never been to such a place, so you have to decide if there is such a, whether it is good. Of course, it's good to have a quiet place, preferably in the country or in a beautiful setting where all the turmoil of city living is eliminated and we have a chance to meditate peacefully. Whether you call it a retreat or a Zen center, usually in these places are regimented to some extent. And that's what is not appealing about them. There is a certain amount of regimentation. When you have to eat and when you not eat, when you sit, when you walk, you are being told.
Yes, I'd read some books recently about various people's experiences in places like this, and it did seem to be appealing, the quiet and the lack of schedule, but I could see how the other would be an imposition on it.
Right, right.
I guess the thing I wondered about was if that was the way of trying to escape, and if it would be better to stay in your environment than to make a retreat like that.
Well, wherever you can find some peace and beauty surrounding you is okay. It's very helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Hora.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for this nice seminar again.
Thank you, Jan. Bye, everyone.